Friends, what if you get something which, after eating, makes your brain so sharp that you can learn any skill or work in the world in just a few minutes and become the most intelligent person in the world? So something similar happens with the hero of our story today, which we will see in today's entire story. So in the beginning of the story, we see a boy named Eddie who wants to become a writer, and after a long time, he has also got some work of book writing from a publisher. However, up to this point, he hasn't managed to write even one word of that book. He only writes a small amount each day, only to erase it afterward. In fact, he became extremely confused and anxious about what his future holds. Because of this setback in his life, his girlfriend, Lenny, eventually breaks up with him and decides to leave him. Even though Eddie was married to a girl named Lolita, his laziness and constant failures led to her leaving him as well. Feeling exhausted and defeated by life, Eddie found himself wandering aimlessly around the city before heading back to his apartment. On his way, he unexpectedly ran into Varnon, who was his ex-wife's brother. They decided to sit down in a cafe and have a conversation. During their talk, Eddie opened up to Varnon, sharing the entire story of his life. As Varnon listened, he realized how deeply confused and troubled Eddie was in his current situation. Wanting to help, Varnon decided to give Eddie a pill, but seeing this, Eddie starts laughing and says, "How can this small pill help me?" But the description tells that this is not an ordinary pill. As soon as you eat it, all your confusion will go away, and you can do any of your work in a very great way. After this, Varn also gives his card to Eddie so that they can stay in touch with each other. Now, Eddie wants to change his bad life in any way. That is why, without delay, he eats that pill before going to his apartment. Then, on the stairs of his apartment, he meets his landlady, who starts telling him that he has not paid the rent yet, and starts talking to him very angrily. But Eddie couldn't understand a thing since he was still under the influence of that pill. Then, all of a sudden, the pill began to take effect, allowing Eddie to comprehend everything with clarity. Also, his memory becomes so good that he remembers all the books he has read in his life. Sometimes he sees a law book in the landlady's bag and tells her that if it was my exam, I would not have read this book at all, and says that there are better books available in the market which she should read. And he also gives her a lot of information about law, due to which his landlady becomes very happy and gets very impressed with his smartness and lets Eddie go. But after coming to the room, the first thing he does is to clean his dirty things and thinks how he was living here till now. He starts to fix everything very quickly, and in this scene, we are shown that Eddie has taken many forms, and all of them are cleaning the room together. This means that Eddie has now become as smart as the brains of 10 people. Then he sits down and starts writing his book, and now he just keeps on writing without stopping and without any confusion. The next morning, when Eddie wakes up, he's back to his usual self, as the medicine's effect has worn off. However, he had finished writing the entire book the night before, so he promptly gives the print sample to the editor. The editor is amazed at how quickly Eddie completed everything. Later, when he returns home, he receives a voice message from the editor, expressing how impressed she is with his writing, and stating that she now wants to write a book for him. Eddie is thrilled and meets Varnana to praise the pill. Varnana explains it's a drug called NGT that unlocks the brain's full potential, allowing full use of its power. Now Eddie asks him for more pills, but Varnon responds by saying that first, he should bring him his suit and a burger from the market. After this, when Eddie returns with the burger and the suit for him, he discovers that someone has shot Varnon dead. Upon seeing this, he becomes very frightened and quickly calls the police to inform them. Now, he begins to realize that someone must have killed Varnon for that pill. So, he begins to search for the pills throughout Varnash's entire room before the police get there. After a lengthy search, he eventually finds a full packet of those pills. Alongside it, he discovers a bundle of notes and a small diary, which he decides to keep. Just at that moment, the police arrive on the scene, prompting him to go and open the door. However, following this, the police take Eddie to the station for questioning. Despite their efforts, the police are unable to extract much information from Eddie regarding the murder, leading them to release him. After this, he comes back and takes the same pin again, and this time he does many things to change himself. And first of all, he writes another book in just 4 days and gives it to the editor, and then learns many new skills like learning new languages, playing cards, focusing on fitness, and making new friends, and talking to those friends on many different topics on the beach. And here Eddie meets a stockbroker named Kevin, who gives him his card. And during this time, he also makes many new friends who take him to a beach. He's invited to a party, goes with friends, and has a great time. Then he gets an idea. He realizes that his main work might not necessarily be writing. Instead, he thinks he could potentially earn more money from the stock market. So, he decides to delve into understanding the stock market. After dedicating an entire week to thorough research, he finally grasps the stock market patterns completely. By investing the $800 he earned from writing into the stock market, he manages to earn $2,000 in just 1 day. In this manner, over just a few days, he accumulates a significant amount of money. But he thinks that now that he has such a good knowledge of the stock market, he should try with a bigger amount. But he needs more money to invest in the stock market, so he meets a Russian man named Yuri for money, who personally lends money on loan. Now, after meeting Yuri, he gives $1 lakh to Eddie. However, at the same time, he also warns him that if he doesn't return his money promptly, he will skin him and place it on his head. Following this, Eddie arrives and decides to invest all that money in the stock market. Remarkably, within just 1 week, using his sharp mind, he manages to make $2 million. Suddenly, due to earning such a large amount of money, he becomes extremely famous in the stock market. People start discussing him everywhere. Consequently, reporters and numerous stockbrokers begin to follow him, and newspapers start featuring stories about Eddie. Then one day, Eddie meets his ex-girlfriend Lindy, who is impressed by his new demeanor. They decide to start over and enjoy many wonderful moments together. One day, while with Lindy, Eddie notices a man following them, but he decides to ignore it and leaves with her. Now the next day, we see that the same stockbroker, Kevin, introduces Eddie to a very famous businessman named Carl. And after talking with Eddie for some time, he gets very impressed by his many ideas related to stock market and business, and goes to drop Eddie home in his car. And during this, he gives some files to Eddie. And after looking at that file, Eddie tells him many defaults of his company and also suggests some solutions to solve the problems of the company. Upon hearing this, Cal is thoroughly impressed with Eddie's intelligence and decides to call him, arranging to meet at a location once more the following day. Afterward, Eddie steps down onto the road and begins to walk a bit. However, during this time, he starts to feel something unusual. This was in fact a side effect of the NGT pill. Because of this side effect, he becomes oblivious to his surroundings and starts finding himself reaching several places simultaneously. Initially, he finds himself in a club. Afterwards, he moves to a party. Following that, he envisions himself in a romantic moment with a girl. Suddenly, he arrives at a station where he is unexpectedly attacked by some goons. However, Eddie was not skilled in fighting. Then he starts recalling the fighting scenes of Jackie Chan, which he had watched numerous times on TV. By imitating Jackie Chan's style, he manages to defeat all the goons. After this, he finds himself standing on a highway bridge. At this point, 18 hours had already passed during these events, but he still couldn't comprehend what was happening to him and how it all unfolded. Following this, we see Eddie waking up from sleep, and he begins to check the files that were sent for the call. However, this time he decides not to take the pill, as he does not want to risk experiencing whatever occurred to him in the past 18 hours once more. Yet, without the pill, he finds himself unable to comprehend anything. Despite this, he still needs to meet Cal today, so he goes to meet Cal without having taken the pill. As a result of skipping the pill, his mind stays just like regular Eddie's, and consequently, he cannot grasp what Cal is discussing. Then he sees in the news that the girl with whom Eddie was a day before has been found dead in the hotel room. And Eddie also remembers something, that maybe he was with that girl, and he felt that maybe he killed that girl. Then he says sorry to Cal and comes out and starts vomiting. After this, he comes home, and due to not taking medicine for a long time, his health started deteriorating. But now, he wanted to know everything about that pill before taking it again. So, for this reason, he begins dialing the phone numbers listed in the diary he obtained from Varnon. Varnon used to supply these pills to these individuals. However, he soon discovers that most of the people who were consuming this medicine have unfortunately passed away. Following this unsettling discovery, he makes a call to the last person on the list, and surprisingly, this call connects to the individual sitting right beside him. It turns out that this was the very same man who had been pursuing Eddie earlier as well. Upon seeing him, Eddie manages to escape from the situation, and in his attempt to flee from him, he eventually finds himself reaching a cafe, where he meets his wife, Melissa. Melissa tells him that she also used to take NGT pills, but due to its side effects, she stopped taking those pills, and since she has quit it, her face has deteriorated, and she has started looking like an old woman. After this, she asks Eddie to quit NGT because his addiction is very bad, and she also tells him that this drug is slowly killing us from inside and it is not so easy to quit it, but she advises Eddie to reduce its dosage gradually and then quit it. After this, Eddie meets the same Russian man jury on the way who had given him $1,00,000 as loan, after which he starts beating Eddie and asks for his money back, because Eddie had not returned his money till now. At the same time, Jerry sees a pill in Eddie's hand and asks him, "What is this?" And he forcibly takes the pill from him and eats it. After this, he starts feeling very good, and then Eddie withdraws money from the bank and gives it to Jerry, after which he leaves. But now Eddie's condition had become very bad, and he needed NGT pills at any cost, so he reaches his girlfriend Ely's office and falls there. Then Ely, seeing him in such a condition, asks what happened, after which Eddie tells him everything about that drug and asks him to bring those pills from home. After this, Lindy heads home and begins taking the pills. On her way, she notices the same man who had been tailing Eddie for several days is now following her. In response, Lindy quickly runs and finds a hiding spot behind a large rock. She calls Eddie to inform him about the situation, explaining everything in detail. Eddie advises Lindy to take a pill, and she agrees, consuming one. As a result, Lindy's mind starts functioning at an incredibly fast pace. Using her newfound mental agility, she cleverly evades the man and successfully escapes. She then makes her way to Eddie and hands him a pill. She gives him the pill and cures him. After this, we see the scene of the next day where Lindy asks Eddie to quit the habit of taking this drug and says that I have taken it only once, but I will never take it again, and you should also stop taking it. But Eddie says that he cannot quit it right now because he has some work left, and he asks for some time so that he can quit this habit slowly. After this, she agrees to Eddie, and then Eddie takes the pill again and tries to understand this drug with his sharp mind, and he understands it. If he decreases the dose of this medication, avoids consuming alcohol while on it, and ensures he eats his meals on schedule, then the side effects of this drug will be minimal. He follows this advice and begins taking the medication in the recommended way. Now, because Eddie's mind was working very fast due to NGT, he takes some important decisions keeping in mind the future. Like, first of all, he gets a quote made for himself, which has a secret pocket where he keeps all his pills safe, and then he meets a chemist and gives him an NGT bill and asks him to make a copy of that bill, which does not have any side effects. And he also gives him a lot of money to make that bill within 6 months. After which Eddie now starts working with the same businessman. He begins to earn a significant amount of profit in the stock market by investing not only Cal's money, but also the funds of many other prominent businessmen like him. During this process, he himself becomes a stockbroker, and in a short period, he turns into a millionaire. However, one day, a police officer apprehends him because he possesses footage showing Eddie with the girl who was dying in the hotel. Eddie immediately calls his lawyer, and after the lawyer learns the entire story, he manages to get Eddie to go to jail. He even gets it released. But when Eddie later checks his pocket to get the pill, he does not find the pills, and he understands that his lawyer had brought the pills to him at the court police station, which means that the lawyer had stolen the pills. On the other hand, Jerry was still after Eddie because he wanted more pills, so Eddie somehow gets rid of him by giving him some bills. At the same time, Eddie was trying to merge Carl's company with another big company whose owner was hanged so that his company could be merged. The stock prices of JP Morgan Chase are expected to rise significantly, and Eddie was set to receive $4 crore from this deal. However, on the day of their merger meeting, instead of Hang, his wife arrives and informs Cal that Hang is in the hospital. He is in a critical condition, and the merger can only proceed once he has recovered. Afterward, when the lady departs from there, Eddie notices her driver is the same man who had been tailing him for a long time. Realizing this, Eddie comprehends everything. This man is associated with Hang, who also used to consume NGT pills. The man was following Eddie because Hang's pills had run out, and without them, Hang's condition deteriorated, becoming critical. Later, when Eddie returns home, he brings Gray along. Gray asks Eddie to open the door, but when Eddie doesn't comply, Gray begins to cut through the door. However, Eddie did not have the bills, and he was not ready to face the jury. So he made the drastic decision to take his own life. As he was about to jump from the building, he suddenly remembered that he might still have one pill left. Immediately, he rushed back to search for it. After a frantic search, he found the pill. But just then, Jerry burst through the door with two other men. In a state of panic, Eddie stumbled, causing the pill to slip from his grasp and fall to the ground. Following this, Jerry's men apprehend him, and then Jerry begins to demand more pills from Eddie. At this point, we observe that Jerry doesn't consume the pills in the same manner as Eddie. Instead, he injects them directly into his veins, allowing the effects to persist for a longer duration. However, when Eddie refuses to hand over the pills, Jerry's men begin a thorough search for them throughout the entire room. During this chaotic time, Eddie seizes an opportunity, launching an attack on Jerry. He manages to kill Jerry by thrusting a shard of glass into his stomach. However, Eddie now desired that pill as his condition was deteriorating too. Observing Gary's bleeding, he recalled that Gary would take an injection containing that pill, meaning the pill was in her blood. So he began to drink her blood, and surprisingly, it worked. After this, he starts killing Eddie's goons one by one, and then escapes from there. On the other hand, Hank also dies in the hospital, after which Eddie goes to Hank's driver and tells him the whole story and asks for help, and that driver also helps him. After this, they go to the lawyer's house and tie him up, and after searching for a long time, Eddie gets the pills again. After this, we see the scene of 1 year later, where now Eddie's book has been published and he has also started his own company. And now he has become a billionaire. And he's also standing for the presidential election when he gets a call in his office from a person who has now come to know that Eddie takes NGT pills, and that is why he was so smart. He comes and asks Eddie to work for him and tells him that he has now bought the company that makes NGT pills. And the manufacturing unit of these pills has also been shut down now. And if Eddie wants to keep getting these pills, then he will have to work with Colin. After saying all this when Collie's about to leave, then Eddie gives an example that says that the coming on the road will hit the car in front, and the same thing happens within a few seconds, after which he tells Ed Occult that I always think 50 steps ahead of you, and it does not matter to him whether NGT will be available in the market or not, because I have already got a copy of that bill made. I have completed it, and the bills I have prepared don't show any side effects from NGT. Then he begins to tell him about the misdeeds and dark actions of Cal's business, which makes Cal afraid of Eddie, prompting him to leave. Now, towards the end of the story, we find Eddie and his girlfriend, Lindy, in a Chinese restaurant. Eddie speaks to the waiter in Chinese to place their order. Observing this, Lindy starts to wonder whether Eddie has truly stopped taking NGT or not, and the story concludes with this scene. It happens. If you liked this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. The end.